The Goggomobil Dart, an unusual microcar that combined German engineering with Australian ingenuity. Our tale begins in Sydney, Australia, where a car dealer named Bill Buckle saw an opportunity. Buckle owned Buckle Motors Limited, a successful dealership, but he had bigger dreams. He wanted to create a car that would capture the hearts of Australians looking for something small, economical, and fun to drive. Buckle's inspiration came from Germany, where Hans Gloss GmbH was producing a tiny car called the Goggomobil. These microcars were becoming popular in Europe, and Buckle thought a similar vehicle could work well in Australia. But there was a problem. Importing fully built cars from Germany would be too expensive due to high import taxes. This is where Buckle's creativity came into play. Instead of importing complete cars, he decided to bring in only the chassis, engine, and running gear from Germany. The body of the car would be designed and built right here in Australia. This clever approach allowed Buckle to keep costs down while still offering a unique product to Australian buyers. For the body of his new car, Buckle turned to a material that was relatively new in the automotive world: fiberglass. This lightweight material was becoming popular for its versatility and ease of molding into different shapes. Fiberglass bodies were lighter than steel, which meant better fuel efficiency and improved handling. Buckle worked with a local engineer to design the body of his new car. The result was a simple, compact design with no doors and an open top. This doorless, roofless style was perfect for Australia's warm climate and gave the car kind of weird but sporty, carefree look. In 1959, the first Goggomobil Dart rolled out of Buckle's workshop. The public and media reaction was positive, with many praising its unique design and lightweight construction. The Dart quickly became an icon of its time, representing Australian innovation and a new era of automotive design. Let's take a closer look at what made the Goggomobil Dart tick. Under the hood, or rather, under the rear engine cover, you'd find a two-stroke, two-cylinder engine. Buyers had two options: a 300cc engine known as the T300 or a larger 400cc engine called the T400. The T300 engine produced 14.8 horsepower and could push the Dart to a top speed of 53 miles per hour or 85 kilometers per hour. For those wanting a bit more power, the T400 engine offered 18.5 horsepower and could reach speeds of up to 65 miles per hour, or 104 kilometers per hour. Now, these numbers might not sound impressive today, but remember, the Dart weighed only about 761 pounds. That's less than half the weight of many modern compact cars. This lightweight design made the Dart nimble and fun to drive, even with its modest power output. The engine was mounted in the rear of the car, a common layout for microcars at the time. Power was sent to the rear wheels through a 4-speed manual transmission. Drivers loved the Dart's smooth gearbox, which allowed for quick gear changes and added to the car's sporty feel. One of the Dart's standout features was its excellent fuel efficiency, thanks to its lightweight and small engine. It also had a tight turning circle and responsive steering, making it a breeze to maneuver in crowded city streets. While it wasn't exactly a speed demon, the Dart could keep up with traffic and even handle modest highway speeds. The Dart's body design was truly unique. Its low-slung, bathtub-like shape with no roof gave it an unusual look for the time. In a clever bit of cost saving, Buckle used a repurposed rear window from a Renault Dauphine as the Dart's windscreen. The lack of doors and the open-top design gave the car a sporty, minimalist look that appealed to younger buyers. When the Goggomobil Dart hit the market in 1959, it was well received. Young drivers especially loved its fun, affordable sports car vibe. However, the Dart's popularity was relatively short-lived. By the early 1960s, other small cars were entering the market and providing stiff competition. One of the biggest challengers to the Dart was the Morris Mini Minor, introduced the same year as the Dart. The Mini quickly became one of the most popular small cars in the world, thanks to its innovative design, excellent handling, and low price. Unlike the Dart, the Mini offered a more practical, enclosed design that appealed to a wider range of buyers. The Dart's doorless, open-top design, while perfect for warm Australian summers, limited its appeal in colder or wetter regions. The lack of weather protection made it less suitable for everyday use, which likely contributed to its declining sales. Despite these challenges, the Goggomobil Dart maintained a loyal following. Production continued until 1961, with around 700 units built in total. While it never achieved the widespread success of cars like the Mini, the Dart remains a beloved part of Australian automotive history. Today, the Goggomobil Dart is a rare and sought-after collector's item. Its unique design, innovative use of materials, and place in automotive history make it a fascinating piece of Australia's past. The Dart stands as a testament to Bill Buckle's creativity and the spirit of innovation that has long been a part of Australian culture. The Felber Autoroller. In the years following World War II, Europe was a landscape of recovery and reinvention. Amidst this backdrop of renewal, an odd little vehicle rolled onto the streets of Vienna, Austria. This was the Felber Autoroller, a three-wheeled microcar that looked like something out of a cartoon, but represented a serious attempt to get Austrians moving again in the tough post-war economy. The story of the Felber Autoroller begins with A. Felber & Company, a company based in Vienna. Before they decided to try their hand at making cars, Felber was known for something quite different: motorcycle sidecars. But as the 1950s dawned, they saw an opportunity to expand their business into the world of microcars. Microcars were tiny, often strange-looking vehicles that were all the rage in post-war Europe. They were cheap to make, cheap to buy, and cheap to run. Perfect for a continent still picking up the pieces after a devastating conflict. The Felber Autoroller was Austria's homegrown entry into this peculiar automotive niche. The man behind the Autoroller's design was Ernst Marold. Marold set out to create a vehicle that was small, practical, and affordable. What he came up with was, well, pretty weird. Picture this: a car with three wheels, just one door, and a body that looked like a bubble with wheels. The Felber Autoroller T400, as it was officially called, wasn't going to win any beauty contests, but it certainly turned heads on the streets of Vienna. Let's talk about what made the Autoroller so unusual. First off, there were those three wheels, two at the front and one at the back. The body style was something called a cabrio coach, which is a fancy way of saying it had a convertible top. But this wasn't your typical convertible. The whole top of the car could be rolled back, leaving the driver and passengers exposed to the elements. Speaking of passengers, the seating arrangement in the Autoroller was about as odd as the rest of the car. The driver's seat was pushed slightly forward, with the small child seat directly behind it on the left side. On the right, there was a regular passenger seat, but it was set diagonally behind the driver. It was like playing automotive Tetris, trying to fit three people into this tiny space. Under the hood, or more accurately, under the rear end, was the engine. The Autoroller used a 398cc, two-cylinder, two-stroke engine made by a company called Rotax. This little power plant pumped out a whopping 15 horsepower. That might not sound like much, but remember, this whole car only weighed about 350 kilograms, less than many motorcycles. With its mighty 15 horses, the Autoroller could reach a top speed of about 60 kilometers per hour, or 37 miles per hour. It wasn't going to set any land speed records, but it was enough to zip around the city streets of Vienna. The Autoroller's construction was as basic as it gets. The frame was made of steel, with body panels of lightweight aluminum. Early versions of the car had mudguards that turned with the wheels, which must have been a sight to see. Later models switched to fixed wings over the wheels, probably because the moving mudguards were just a bit too weird, even for a car this unusual. One of the most striking things about the Autoroller was its color, or rather, its lack of color options. Every single Felber Autoroller was painted the same shade of light green, but this wasn't some carefully chosen brand color. No, Felber just used the cheapest industrial machinery paint they could find, which happened to be green. It wasn't pretty, but it kept costs down, and that was the name of the game with microcars. Production of the Felber Autoroller began in 1952. A. Felber & Company had big dreams for their little car, hoping to mass-produce it and get Austrians behind the wheel en masse. But things didn't quite work out that way. In the end, only about 400 Autorollers were ever built. The Autoroller's time in the spotlight was brief. In 1954, just 2 years after production started, the Austrian government relaxed its restrictions on car imports. Suddenly, the Autoroller was facing competition from bigger, more established car makers like Heinkel and Trojan. These companies could produce cars more efficiently and cheaply than little Felber could, and the writing was on the wall for the Autoroller. In a last-ditch effort to stay in the game, Felber started importing and selling three-wheeled vehicles from other manufacturers, but it wasn't enough. By the end of 1954, production of the Autoroller had ceased. Felber gave up on cars altogether and switched to making industrial washing machines. It was an inglorious end for a company that had briefly dared to dream of automotive success, but the Autoroller wasn't forgotten. During its short life, it had gained a small but devoted following. There was even an Austrian Autoroller club, where enthusiasts could get together and, well, enthuse about their weird little cars. One of the high points in Autoroller history came in 1954 at the wedding of its designer, Ernst Marold. A group of Autorollers formed a procession behind the wedding limousine, puttering through the streets of Vienna in a parade of automotive oddity. Today, the Felber Autoroller is a rare sight indeed. Out of the 400 or so that were built, only a handful have survived. Two of the best preserved examples can be found at the RR Scooter and Microcar Museum in Eggenberg, Austria. Another is undergoing restoration in Serbia, near the Hungarian border, while one more is part of a private collection in Bavaria, Germany. The Hoffstead Turbo, a rare and unusual Brazilian sports car from the 1980s, tells a unique story of ambition, creativity, and the challenges of creating a high-performance vehicle in an unexpected place. Our story begins in Brazil during the 1970s and early 1980s. At this time, Brazil had strict laws that made it very hard to import cars from other countries. The government wanted to protect and grow Brazil's own car industry, so they put high taxes on foreign vehicles. This meant that many Brazilians couldn't buy luxury or sports cars from Europe or America. Enter Mario Richard Hoffstetter, a man with a vision. Hoffstetter saw an opportunity in this situation. He thought, if Brazilians can't buy foreign sports cars, why not create our own? This idea led to the birth of the Hoffstead Turbo, a car that would become known for its unique design and rarity. Hoffstetter began sketching his dream car in 1980. He wanted to create something that could compete with European sports cars while being made entirely in Brazil. By 1982, Hoffstetter and a small team had built their first prototype. The car's body was made of fiberglass, a material chosen for being lightweight and easy to shape into complex forms. The design of the Hoffstead Turbo was heavily influenced by the wedge-shaped sports cars that were popular in Europe at the time. If you saw one, you might think of the Alfa Romeo Carabo, a concept car that inspired many designers in the 1970s. The Hoffstead Turbo had sharp, angular lines and a low profile that made it look fast, even when standing still. But the most eye-catching feature of the Hoffstead Turbo was its doors. Instead of opening outward like normal car doors, they swung upward like the wings of a seagull. These gull-wing doors weren't just for show. They gave the car a futuristic look that set it apart from anything else on Brazilian roads at the time. Under the hood, the Hoffstead Turbo was just as interesting. The first models used a 1.8-liter engine from the Volkswagen Passat, a car that was common in Brazil. But Hoffstetter didn't leave the engine stock. He added a Garrett turbocharger, which forced more air into the engine, making it produce about 140 horsepower. That might not sound like much today, but for a small, lightweight car in the 1980s, it was quite powerful. Later versions of the Hoffstetter Turbo got an even bigger engine. These models used a 2.0-liter engine from another Volkswagen, the Santana. With the turbocharger, this larger engine could produce up to 210 horsepower. This extra power allowed the car to reach speeds of up to 147 miles per hour, putting it in the same league as many European sports cars of the time. The Hoffstetter Turbo wasn't just about straight-line speed, though. Its engine was placed in the middle of the car, behind the driver, but in front of the rear wheels. This layout, called mid-engine, is often used in race cars because it helps the car handle better in turns. Combined with its lightweight, This made the Hoffstead Turbo nimble and fun to drive on twisty roads. In 1984, Hoffstetter officially launched his car to the public. However, turning his dream into reality proved challenging. It wasn't until 1986 that the first production models started rolling out of the workshop. Hoffstetter had big plans. He wanted to build 30 cars every year. But the reality of producing a complex sports car in Brazil, where the market for such vehicles was small, proved difficult. In the end, between 1986 and 1991, only 18 Hoffstetter Turbos were ever built. This extremely low production number makes the Hoffstetter Turbo one of the rarest sports cars in the world. The limited production wasn't due to a lack of quality or performance. Instead, it was a result of the challenges Hoffstetter faced. Building a car from scratch is expensive, and selling high-priced sports cars in Brazil in the 1980s wasn't easy. The country was facing economic difficulties, and even wealthy Brazilians were cautious about spending money on luxury items like sports cars. Despite its short production run, the Hoffstetter Turbo left a lasting mark on Brazil's automotive history. Today, it's a prized collector's item. Most of the 18 cars built are still in Brazil, though a few have found their way to collections in other countries. For car enthusiasts who love rare and unusual vehicles, owning a Hoffstetter Turbo is a dream come true. However, keeping these rare cars running isn't easy. Because so few were made, and the company stopped production over 30 years ago, finding original parts is almost impossible. Many owners have had to get creative, either making custom parts or adapting components from other cars to keep their Hoffstetter Turbos on the road. The Aurora Safety Car. In the world of automobiles, there are cars that capture our imagination with their sleek designs and powerful engines. And then there are cars that make us pause and wonder, what were they thinking? The Aurora Safety Car falls firmly into the second category. But beneath its unusual exterior lies a fascinating story of innovation, ambition, and a quest for safer roads. Our tale begins in 1957 with a Catholic priest named Father Alfred Giuliano. Now, you might be wondering what a priest was doing designing cars. Well, Father Giuliano wasn't your average clergyman. Before joining the priesthood, he had studied art, which gave him a unique perspective on problem solving. He was also deeply concerned about car safety, believing that the vehicles of his time were far too dangerous. You see, the 1950s were a different era for car design. Manufacturers focused on power and style, often at the expense of safety. Father Giuliano saw an opportunity to change this mindset and create a car that could revolutionize automotive safety. And so, the idea for the Aurora was born. To bring his vision to life, Father Giuliano turned to an unconventional source of funding, his own parish in Connecticut. He also dipped into his personal savings, eventually going deep into debt to finance his dream. Working mostly on his own, without the backing of any major car companies, Father Giuliano spent years designing and building the Aurora. The result was, well, let's just say it was ugly. The Aurora Safety Car looked like nothing else on the road. It had a large, rounded windshield that made it resemble a space capsule more than a car. The body was made of fiberglass, built over a wooden frame. This was an unusual choice at the time, but Father Giuliano believed it would make the car more durable and resistant to rust and dents. But the Aurora's strange appearance wasn't just for show. Every aspect of its design was focused on safety. Let's take a tour of some of its innovative features. First, there were the seats. These weren't your ordinary car seats. They could swivel 180 degrees to face the rear of the car if a crash was about to happen. The idea was to protect passengers by turning them away from the point of impact. It's a feature that no other car has ever incorporated, before or since. Then there was the steering column. In the 1950s, steering wheels were a major cause of injury in car accidents. Father Giuliano's solution? A collapsible steering column that would give way during a crash, reducing the risk of injury to the driver. The Aurora also included seat belts, which were far from standard in the 1950s. It had a roll cage, typically found only in race cars, to protect passengers during rollovers. Side impact bars were built into the doors for added protection during side collisions. Even pedestrians weren't forgotten in Father Giuliano's safety-first design. The front bumper was filled with foam and designed to scoop up pedestrians in the event of a collision, potentially reducing injuries. Other features included a padded dashboard, a spare tire placed under the front of the car to absorb impact, and a transparent tinted plastic roof with adjustable metal shades to protect from the sun. With all these innovative features, you might think the Aurora was destined for success. But as often happens with groundbreaking ideas, things didn't quite go according to plan. The Aurora's public debut was set for 1957 in New York City. Father Giuliano was ready to show off his creation to the world. But the journey to the unveiling turned into a disaster. The Aurora had been built on an old 1953 Buick chassis and hadn't been started in years. As Father Giuliano drove to New York, the car broke down. Not once, not twice, but 15 times. The fuel lines were clogged with debris from the long construction process. Father Giuliano had to stop at 7 different repair shops just to make it to the press conference. When he finally arrived, hours late, the media was more interested in the car's breakdowns than its safety features. Instead of praising the Aurora's innovations, reporters mocked its odd appearance and poor performance. Some even called it a road hazard for causing so many traffic problems on its way to the event. The negative press was a death blow to Father Giuliano's dreams. No one placed orders for the Aurora, and the idea of mass production evaporated. To make matters worse, Father Giuliano was accused of misusing parish funds for the project. He had invested everything into the Aurora, and now he was left with nothing. Soon after, he declared bankruptcy, and the Aurora was forfeited to a repair shop due to unpaid bills. For decades, the Aurora sat forgotten behind a repair shop in Cheshire, Connecticut. It seemed that Father Giuliano's dream of a safer car had died. But the story doesn't end there. In the early 1990s, a British car enthusiast named Andy Saunders stumbled upon a sketch of the Aurora in a book about dream cars. Intrigued by its unusual design, Saunders tracked down the car and purchased it for $1,500, sight unseen. He paid another $2,000 to have it shipped to the UK. When the Aurora arrived, Saunders found it in terrible condition. The wooden frame had rotted and many parts were missing, but Saunders was determined to restore this piece of automotive history. He spent years working on the car, bringing it back to its original condition. Today, the Aurora Safety Car can often be seen at the National Motor Museum in Beaulieu, England. While it never revolutionized car safety as Father Giuliano had hoped, many of its innovative features are now standard in modern cars. Seatbelts, padded dashboards, and collapsible steering columns are all part of Father Giuliano's legacy. The Aurora Safety Car remains one of the strangest-looking vehicles ever made, but its story is a testament to the power of vision and the importance of dreaming big. Father Alfred Giuliano may not have changed the automotive industry overnight, but his ideas helped pave the way for the safer cars we drive today.